Hello and welcome to Center Stage. I'm Deanne Conrad, Community Relations Supervisor for the Sioux Falls School District. Center Stage is a new program that we're featuring here on K-Learn TV, your Sioux Falls Classroom Connection. Our hope is that by introducing you to some of the educational professionals in the Sioux Falls Public Schools, that you'll learn a little bit more about their passion for education and also what motivates these leaders to continue doing what they love. And our very first guest is Ann Smith. She is Director of Curriculum and Instruction. That's a new title for you. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about Ann Smith.
Hi, Deanne. Yes, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. I started July 1st in that position. I am also the coordinator for all of the school district's libraries. That's a position, that's a responsibility that I've had in all the years I've been with the district, which I think this is my 16th year.
Okay.
So yeah, libraries were my first passion, but as I've worked through, I've now come into this role of curriculum and instruction.
Well, tell us a little bit about what the Director of Curriculum and Instruction does on a daily basis.
Well, I tell people who ask me that, it's lots of meetings. It's one of those positions where instead of being directly responsible for daily activities, I'm coordinating at a much larger level,
Sure.
the bigger umbrella across the district. Dr. Maher and I have talked about this is like the Director of Student Experience. So what I'm focusing on is making sure that every day all of our students are engaged in learning materials that are relevant, that they're excited about what they're learning, and that when they graduate they're well prepared to go on to college or career or whatever they choose to do.
Right, and so the focus on curriculum and instruction, when we're talking about curriculum, we're talking about covering all of the academic areas, all of the content areas that are out there for students to take. So I don't even know how many offerings there are or how many classes there are offered.
And neither do I.
I feel like it's somewhere close to 300 or somewhere along that line. But everything from your basic math to your most advanced math and AP courses to physical education to sciences and everything under the sun.
So
how does one coordinate that all?
Well, fortunately, I have a very good team.
Okay.
We have an elementary curriculum coordinator, a middle school curriculum coordinator, and a high school curriculum coordinator, as well as a fine arts coordinator, and then a coordinator for physical education. So those people really work the closest to the teachers in working on the curriculum.
Okay, so when we're working on a curriculum or looking at a curriculum to determine if it is relevant and what we should be teaching, what's the process? What does that look like when we sort of dissect and dig into a curriculum?
There's basically a 7-year cycle, and we're in the first year of the social studies curriculum cycle. So what that means is we're forming the district steering committee for the social studies curriculum review. That's a group of parents and teachers and community members who will come together and we'll study what the national standards say should be taught in social studies curriculum. We'll look at what we're currently teaching. We'll adopt a philosophy statement and a mission statement. And then that will go out to our level committees at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. They'll take that mission, that philosophy and mission and vision, and they'll start digging into what does this look like at the elementary level. That will happen start to happen in January, February, and will happen all up until about January, when they'll actually make a selection of here are the materials that we think we need to purchase. Then that purchase will be made usually right around May and June. We're putting orders in so that the materials are paid for and arrive right after July 1st.
Sure.
Then the next year, the teachers start using those new materials.
Okay.
And we come back around then and say, okay, now towards the end of this year, how are things going? What do we need to tweak? What do we need to change? We make those changes, and then we start moving forward with that. Then the next time we would come back around would be 7 years from now. We'd come back and form another district steering committee. But the first 3 years are the most intense years of studying, and then let the curriculum roll, and then come back around and review and see how we look.
Sure. So those that curriculum cycle, as we call it, typically on a 7-year cycle, give or take. But there are some adjustments.
Yes.
We do have a schedule written out, but various things have happened in the state with content standards or just I think one of the things we've talked about in the past is computers and technology and such. 7 years is a long time. There's a lot of development that takes place over 7 years' time that you can't wait that long.
That's really true. And part of the transition that we're in right now with relation to computers is many of our textbook companies are going to electronic texts. So typically when we purchase, we're purchasing a print text, a classroom set of print texts, and then an electronic text, which can be updated as the 7 years go along. It does get into some more challenging things if you start to think about that a little bit, because the textbook companies would really rather that be a kind of a subscription. What happens if in our 7-year curriculum cycle we do have to extend it to the 8th or 9th year? Well, sure, we have the print textbooks, but then what about those electronic textbooks? Typically the companies make us pay a little bit to continue them because we paid for 7-year access, not 8, 9. Anyway, it's an interesting thing that I don't think many people realize just how the electronic format impacts the financial side of purchasing a curriculum.
Absolutely, and some curriculums just by nature are a lot more costly than the next. So there's a whole lot of budget adjustments from one year to the next, where we may have a very huge curriculum adoption and purchase in terms of dollars, and then maybe the next year isn't such a huge amount. What are some of the curriculums that are more costly, and why are they more costly?
Well, historically, actually one of the most expensive curriculum adoptions that we've had was an English language arts adoption, and the primary reason for that was we were moving to making sure that we had authentic texts at a variety of reading levels so that children were engaged with what they were reading. But in a classroom, not all of your 5th graders are reading at the same level. And so, we were really wanting to be able to reach all of the students at that level so that we could keep them spiraling forward, not be frustrated, but not be too easy either. So that was one of our more expensive adoptions. Another adoption that tends to be expensive can be a science curriculum, where you might have a lot of equipment and lab supplies and materials. And even the fine arts curriculum can be a little more expensive, depending on how much you're changing within that curriculum, and how much you're changing can be determined by how much money you have available to be able to change things. So it's always that dance between here's what we see as the ideal, and here's what we can afford to do.
Sure. So those are conversations, high-level conversations that parents have input on and teachers have input on. And then, of course, it does come down to the financial situation, whether or not we can afford that. But if I'm a parent and I'm participating in one of these committees or something, what does that look like? What do I get to do as a parent, or how do I become engaged in that process?
Well, certainly one of the things that parents can do is be a part of the committees. Like I said, there's a district steering committee, and that really is one where the parents are mostly going to be hearing about the philosophy and the foundational ideas behind a curriculum, not so much what specifically is taught as each grade level. Then parents can also be involved at the grade level. They would contact the coordinator, and then they can be a part of that committee, not necessarily meeting every time that all of the teachers meet to look at materials.
Trust
but they can
me,
also,
you wouldn't want
but being involved so that we could work out a time that there might be that level committee coming back and just saying, here's what we've been looking at and here's what we're thinking. And of course, parents should always feel welcome to call us at IPC, find out what's going on with the curriculum, talk to the principals, talk to the teachers, and express their interest, and we'll be glad to let you know whenever there are opportunities.
And I know in past curriculum adoptions, the materials have been available for parents to come and review. Even if they're not serving on a committee, they're still able to come and review that and see what's being talked about, and where that decision making might be going in the future.
That's true, and sometimes it's a little disappointing because we do try to have all of the materials laid out so that people, and we might have one or two people come and look at it.
Sure.
But we do want parents to know right up front, here's what we're going to be teaching our children, because we live in a pluralistic society. We live in a society where people have different ideas about what absolutely must be taught, and part of what we do is try to acknowledge that there are different viewpoints
Absolutely.
and help children learn how to navigate that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's part of the process is, making sure they see the big picture.
Yes.
And helping them develop the critical thinking skills to determine what their own personal choices might be for the future, or how they
Yes.
might view something.
Yes.
And of course, parents are very much involved in shaping their children, so we do want that
Absolutely, absolutely.
option available to them. Well, also, as you mentioned, you're the library coordinator. What does that mean? We have libraries, wonderful libraries, in every one of our school buildings. Tell us a little bit about the library world.
We have a very supportive community. I'm very proud of our library system. Several years ago, our school board made the investment to ensure that all of our elementary libraries have a full-time librarian. That's something that is pretty unique in the state of South Dakota, and I do believe that our children are benefiting greatly from that decision. Our libraries offer a place where our students can come and explore their interests. It's one of the places where you truly can just say, I want to know everything I can know about this. And it's not just the books on the shelves. Our librarians are professionals in navigating the online world. We call librarians. We actually changed the title to librarian because so much information is available electronically now. Unfortunately, not all of it is good information or accurate information. A lot of it's misinformation. And so our librarians, our librarians, do a lot of work with students to help them learn how to distinguish. It's that critical thinking, which when you get right down to it, that's the goal of education. We need to teach our students to be thinkers.
Absolutely. So their opportunities in the library, they each have classroom lessons taught by librarians,
Yes,
and then the library is open for just general enjoyment as well, beyond how a library could be used.
Correct, right. And at the elementary level, all students come and have a class in the library every week with the librarian. At middle and high school, the classes are taught in conjunction with another teacher, team taught,
Right.
as they're going in and doing research. But yes,
Research
other than that, the libraries are open and available. Our high school libraries are open before and after school, and they're very busy places. It's an exciting thing to go in there before school and see hundreds of students.
Right. And it's not the super quiet libraries of the past. There are reading corners where book talks are going on, and a variety of there's just a lot of activity. If you've not been in a school library in the last 10, 20 years, you'd probably be, I know it's certainly not like the library of the high school where I attended. It's a lot more engaging and colorful and just sort of grabs your attention.
Yeah, people still tease me and will make comments about, oh man, it's like you have to be quiet. It's like walking into a library where the librarian doesn't want you to touch the books. And we all laugh because that is a stereotype that is so not true in the Sioux Falls
Right.
School District, that
Right.
it truly is humorous to hear people say that because we're so far away from that. One of the things that we're really excited about is in 2 weeks, we'll be having authors coming in. We've got Rosemary Wells, who's a famous award-winning author. She's been writing for 30 years, over 120 books, the Max and Ruby books, Noisy Nora.
Yeah.
She's coming and will be speaking at the Whittier Middle School auditorium. We've got April Henry, who's a young adult author, writes crime mysteries. She'll be in all of our middle schools and high schools meeting with students, and all of our third graders will be going down to the pavilion to meet an author. And there is something magical when students meet authors.
That was a great segue. I was going to bring that up, the fact that the school district has been very active in bringing authors here in the past with the support of the local library community.
And the Humanities Council.
And Humanities Council. So we couldn't obviously do that on our own. But what is it about, I was even enamored when I went to one of our schools and an author was there. She was so down to earth and human. And you sort of put the author at, she must be someone that's like a recluse and sitting in a corner writing a book and kind of on her own. She was so dynamic and so just full of life, and it was fun for me to see. And of course, I enjoyed her book too that she was talking about. But just what impact do you think authors coming to our schools and to our community can really have on young readers?
I think one of the impacts that it has in the first place is you do see this is just another human being, and then it becomes this idea of I could do that.
Right.
I enjoy writing. I could be an author.
Sure.
I could have a book published. This person is really not that different. They're not a superhuman.
Right.
And then I think as human beings we have this internal need to connect, and a good author does that on the page, but that's coming from the person of who they are. And so then when you meet them, they also have that ability to just connect with you as a human being, which at a very, very fundamental level just kind of affirms us, and we feel good.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And when you feel good, you gain confidence, and
Yeah.
everything's better.
And the students that this particular author was meeting with, it was a third grade level, and the kids were just, they had questions. How did you start with your idea? And to hear those students ask sort of the big thinking questions was really interesting to hear, that they're not, what's your favorite kind of pizza, or what's your favorite color?
What's a good name for a hamster?
Right. No, they were really, talking about how did you develop your idea? When, was there ever a time in this book where it just wasn't going where you thought it was going to go? And for a third grade student, an 8 or a 9-year-old, I thought those are pretty great questions for kids to come up with. So having the opportunity really expands the minds of the students.
It does expand the minds of the opportunity. And to kind of cycle back, I think the other thing that is a testimony to the instruction that's happening in our classrooms and the teacher's influence on those students, because the teacher has helped encourage them in how to ask what is a good question. How do you ask a good question to get at what you're really wondering about? Plus the teacher's just encouraging that attitude of wonder and not being afraid.
Right.
Not being afraid to just speak up and ask when there's something that you just really want to know.
Need to know. Well, it was a great opportunity to hear those kids just formalize, and put into words what their curiosities were. And I thought they were better questions than I might have asked at that age, for sure. So I have come to you a number of times seeking books, suggestions from you for my own kids to read and helping them get engaged. And you've provided me with some wonderful examples of things that they could read and such. But if people don't have an Ann Smith to walk down the hall and ask, where are some great places that parents could go to find really good books that might engage their kids? I know there's a variety of lists out there.
Yeah, there are a variety of lists. The American Library Association has awards, and so you can always look for like the Caldecott medalists, the Newbery medalists. South Dakota has a Reader's Choice Award, and those Reader's Choice Awards are often maybe even a little more relevant for the students perhaps than the Newbery and the Caldecott, because it's the kids, the readers themselves, that have read them and said this was the best one. And it doesn't have to be the winner. It's called the Prairie Pask Award, and then there's the Young Adult Reading Program. The South Dakota Library Association, if you search South Dakota Library Association on Google and look for the Young Adult Reading Program or the Prairie Pask, you'll see the lists for several years. Any one of those books would be awesome. Whether it was one of the winners or not. And there's also the Prairie Bud for those very beginning readers, K2.
So that's a good option for parents if they're trying to, and a lot of what we do is, I'll read the books right along with the kids and be able to ask the questions, and I think, just have a conversation about the book, that instead of how's your day today, oh, it was fine, who did you play with at recess, what did you have for lunch, having a conversation starter like a book where you can say, hey, did you get to chapter 6 yet?
Absolutely.
Did you see what happened there? That's really a great opportunity for parents to connect with their kids.
Yep, on a very, very meaningful level.
Right.
And as you know, many times when you ask me for recommendations, the first thing I say is, I'll go back and ask the librarian. So one thing I would say to parents is get to know your school librarian, get to know the public librarians, that's a group of people who are as passionate about getting your kids to read as you are. So.
Absolutely. And generally, when I've gotten those ideas from you and we've read the book, it's like, how did I not read this book when I was a kid? Or, and some of them are books that have been around for ages, and some are, brand new books.
Yeah.
But some of those books, like the series, the Laura Ingalls Wilder series, those are timeless. Those are things that always will be a good read if you're looking for something.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
good times. When you have gone and found books that you love, what kind of passion, if we're going to get to know you a little bit more, what kind of area of books do you like? What kind of genre of books does Anne Smith pick up?
Well, and as I've gone on my journey of life, I've moved through several genres. For a long time, my favorite was fantasy. I was a big fantasy reader. Actually, now I've started to move more into biographies and nonfiction books, which is something that I can remember my aunt and grandmother talking a little bit about, being surprised when they made that kind of same transition. So I think it's kind of interesting how at my current stage in life, I've become more fascinated in what drives other real people in history. So yeah, I've been turning to the biographies.
It's just like we're doing today, finding
Yes.
out about Anne Smith. This is a biographical program, perhaps. So, have you ever gone somewhere that has traveled somewhere that has truly inspired you, or has helped you connect or get back to the core of who Anne Smith really is?
That's an interesting question. I guess, in a way, one of my interests besides fantasy is history and historical fiction. And 4 years ago, I traveled to Springfield, Illinois, and saw the Abraham Lincoln Museum and just walked the streets of Springfield. And that experience of beginning to understand a side of the politics at the time, understanding that Abraham Lincoln, at the time he became president, Springfield, Illinois, had muddy streets, and he used to share a single bed. I mean, it was just, you have this idea that our presidents are like a king.
Sure.
And then finding out that he really was that kind of just like,
Man on the street.
Man on the street, exactly. Yeah, I think whether that got into who Anne Smith is as a human, but it was just a very impactful thing. I always enjoy getting into a situation where I'm forced to rethink my previous beliefs or biases, and that really did it for me. That really did it for me.
So that experience then, did that obviously left an impact on you. Was there anything surprising, that jumped out at you? I know you said about the streets and being muddy, and it's just like, wow. That,
and then at the Abraham Lincoln Museum, which is the most phenomenal multimedia experience you'll ever go to, which one of the things that I really enjoy is how computers can help us understand and see things in a way, because they can bring, through the magic of television and holographics and graphics, and bring things to life. But they had this exhibit that you went through, and what you heard were snippets of what people were saying at the time that Abraham Lincoln was running for president, and the Civil War. Then the Civil War broke out, and then there was the debate about whether or not he should sign the Emancipation Proclamation. And I never thought about that being a debate that just people around the country were
weighing
like,
in on.
Yeah. And I had no idea of just how, I just assumed that, well, of course people in the North were supporting Abraham Lincoln, and when he signed it, they were like, yeah, that was the thing to do. And it was not that at all. I mean, he really had to dig in, and that's part of it, when you're just seeing that Abraham Lincoln was a human being, and he couldn't just say, I'm going to do whatever is popular. He really had to dig into his own soul to figure out what to do.
Awesome. Well, those are things I think we can all learn about, maybe inspire somebody else to make that trip as well, or take
Or
their
read a biography about Abraham Lincoln to their child.
Absolutely, that'd be wonderful. That'd be a great start. So I think that those experiences and those personal level connections that people make, sometimes we find that we would enjoy that too, and we just have never thought about it. That's one of the things I love about having a conversation with Ann, is it's always a very in-depth conversation. She makes me think about things that I had never thought about before. So I'm always, if I have a big picture question or just unsure about where this is all going, Ann's usually the one that I take the question to, because you help me think on a different level than I previously was thinking. And I think that that's a great attribute of a leader of the Sioux Falls School District, to know that that's what you're encouraging, is those.
And that's why I love education, and that's my passion. It's not necessarily a passion for education as much as it is a passion for learning, and whatever we can do to spark that flame. And I believe that's what distinguishes us as human beings, is that desire to learn and that curiosity about the world around us, and then trying to figure out what to do with that. And that's what we need to feed in each and every child.
Right. And bringing it back full circle, as Director of Curriculum and Instruction, you have a hand in creating those opportunities, those experiences for students to dig deeper and to find, and challenge their ideals or their past perceptions and things like that through the curriculum. So
Yes.
it's a big umbrella with a lot stuffed underneath it in terms of that title and what you do. But you're great at what you do, and we're so glad to have you as a leader in the Sioux Falls School District, and also as our inaugural guest here on Center Stage. Any last minute things people would be surprised to know about Ann Smith?
I think they might be surprised to know that I spent my first 5 years of education in a one-room country school.
Oh.
And that I only had 2 weeks of kindergarten.
Really?
And the teacher really didn't want to do those because it was the one-room country school, and that meant she had to add one more grade for those 2 weeks. But
So did you go home after 2 weeks, or did you become a first grader?
no, I went home. She did 2 weeks in the spring and
Oh,
a
I
half a
see.
day, and she might even have decided that second week was going to end on Thursday. I don't know.
Well, kindergarten is much different than it was back then.
It is.
Our kindergartners surprise us on a daily basis about how much they take in from the world, and the fact that they're reading, and just
And
all
never
kinds of great
underestimate what a
things.
kindergartner can do.
Nope. If you want to know about life, just ask a kindergartner.
That's right.
Well, that comes to the conclusion of the end of our first program on Center Stage. I'm so glad you could join us. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for watching Center Stage.